Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to be making a brookie, which is kind of a half brownie, half cookie. And then we're going to be doing a roast beef and double cheddar melt. So let's start prepping. We're going to start with the chocolate chip cookie dough part for our brookie. Then we'll make our brownie part and pop that in the oven. Today's my daughter's birthday, and she is not a fan of cakes. So she loves brownies and cookies, so she asked for a brookie. So we are going to make that for her to enjoy with some ice cream. She's like, I also need ice cream. Chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream and vanilla ice cream. So we're kind of going all out. So I'm putting one and a half sticks or 3/4 cups of room temperature butter. And we're gonna just kind of blend it up a little bit to get it, start the creaming process. And then, knock these out together. We're gonna add in 3/4 cup of brown sugar with 1/3 cup of regular sugar. And put these right back in. Okay. So we're gonna start with 3/4 cup brown sugar, and you'll wanna have it firmly packed. So I'm just gonna push it in. And the reason why we firmly pack it is brown sugar is held together much looser than granulated sugar. So you're gonna wanna pack it in. And there we go. So we've got 3/4 cup brown sugar. And then we're going to add 1/3 cup of white sugar. Okay, so we got 1/3 cup of white sugar, and we're going to blend these together and cream them up nicely. Go. And this is going to be the start of the cookie base for our brookie. There we go. Mix them up nicely until they're thoroughly mixed together and kind of form in a nice thick dough. Okay. Give this a quick off. And now we are going to add in our eggs. So we're going to use 1 egg and 1 egg yolk. So 1 whole egg and then an egg yolk. So we've got our whole egg in there. And now we are going to use just the yolk. So I'm going to actually do this over my sink. And what I'm doing is I've cracked my egg in half, and then I kind of went back and forth until all of the whites were out. And this, we're gonna cream this into our cookie dough part, which is going to be the base for in our brookie. So you'll have kind of brownie on the bottom and cookie dough on the top for this brookie. And then we'll be making some roast beef and cheddar melts in a little bit. So now we're gonna cream our 1 egg and our eggs plus an egg yolk into our butter and sugar mixture.
You have a request for chicken cordon bleu in the future?
Yeah, I haven't made that in a very long time. I'll have to do that. Honestly, it might be like 2 decades since I made that. That was really big in the early 2000s. I remember making that in high school a lot, being all fancy because I thought I was a fancy chef. Okay, so this is our 1 1/2 sticks of butter with 3/4 cups brown sugar, 1/3 cup of sugar, and then 1 egg plus a yolk of an egg into our mixture. Now we are going to add in a tablespoon of vanilla. Oh, it's stuck again. This vanilla hates me, I swear. Sometimes it opens up super nice for me, and sometimes, there we go, it gets stuck. So we're gonna put in 1 tablespoon of vanilla. It's gonna give the cookie part of our brookie just a lovely flavor. And we're gonna give this a quick mix. Beautiful. And now we're going to add in our baking soda.
And now you have a request about Swiss steak.
Huh. You know what? I've never made Swiss steak before, so I'll have to look into that and try it out. We're going to use a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. So I'm going to mix it right in there. I try to cut out the sifting into flour, so I actually mix my baking soda and my salt into my wet part before I add the flour, and it just makes it mix well, and then you don't have to sift. And then we're going to add a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And we're going to give this a nice little whip up before we add our flour in. There we go. We've got all of that are incorporated now, and now we're going to add in our flour for our cookie base for the brookie, and then our chocolate chips. So we're going to use, it's not quite 2 cups, it's just under 2 cups of flour. So we're going to do my full one, and this is all-purpose flour. And then I'm just gonna do my second one, and I'm just gonna leave it just a little shy under it. You know, once you, it's more than 3/4 of a cup, but less than. So I always just go a little bit under my 2-cup mark. Because you're not using a full, you know, this is kind of like a hybrid between, you know, a cookie dough and a brownie, but you don't use like a full batch of cookie dough, and it's slightly different than a traditional cookie dough because it will bake up nicely in the brookie. So we're going to mix this in until it's just combined. Okay. Now it's forming a lovely dough. Okay, and then we'll stir the chocolate chips in, because I find if you use a hand mixer to try to get the chocolate chips in, they go flying. So I'm going to take these out because we're going to be using these for the brownie part in just a second. There we go. And so we've got our dough. I'm going to use my spoon. Give it a little stir, and we're going to add in 1/2 bag of chocolate chips, and then we'll be done with the cookie dough base part of our brookie. So then we'll make our brownie batter for the brookie, and then we're gonna make some roast beef and cheddar melts. I can only open it. I don't know if you guys have it, but our scissors in our house go missing all the time. And the only scissors we have left are little kid scissors. And I have bought so many pairs of scissors, and my children steal them. So we're just gonna use 1/2 of the chocolate chips for this, because the other 1/2 we're gonna be putting in our brownie. So it's about 6 ounces of chocolate chips. And then 6 ounces will go into our brownie. And then we're just gonna use our spoon to mix it up. This is going to be our lovely cookie base of our brookie, which if you've never had a brookie before, it is essentially a 1/2 cookie, 1/2 brownie. Or like you could think about it as like a chocolate chip blondie and a brownie mixed together. You know, it took me for the longest time to realize that brownies and blondies were the same like thing, except one had cocoa powder and one didn't. And it was like, oh, blondie because they're blonde colored, and brownies because they're brown colored. I didn't realize that until like 5 years ago, and then it's just like one of those, oh, that's so dumb, I didn't realize it. Okay, so now we have our lovely cookie dough mixture for our brookie. Just take that off because we're going to use this spoon for our brownie part. Okay, got this bowl, and we're going to start off by melting. Dogs are snoring quite loudly over there. 1.5 sticks of butter, and we're going to start melting them in this small pot. So I'm going to turn it on. I'm going to turn on my smaller burner. And then 1/2 stick. There we go. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but they are such loud snorers. Sometimes our dogs will be snoring in the middle of the night and they're so loud you just have to like nudge them to wake them up because they've got little snouts and their little snouts make them snore so loud. Okay, we're gonna melt our 1.5 sticks of butter in here. Once we've got the butter, our little dogs all sleeping underneath the table. Once our start to melt, I'm gonna add in the rest of the chocolate chips and we'll melt them in there, but I wanna make sure that there's a good amount of butter on the bottom so you don't burn your chocolate chips. This kind of takes out having to do a double broiler, which is a pain. And then we'll start on there. For this one, we're gonna use 3 eggs, and I forgot to grab one more. We need 3 eggs plus 1 yolk. So I'm gonna grab 1 more egg while our butter is melting. There we go. And we're going to, so we have our 1.5 sticks of butter melting for our brownie base. We're gonna add our chocolate chips in just a second. Let's start on making the rest of the wet base for this. So we are going to put in 3 eggs plus 1 egg yolk into our bowl. So 1, 2. I told my daughter I must love her because I'm using 1/2 dozen eggs on this recipe for her. And eggs are hard to come by. I was at the grocery store yesterday picking up some stuff, and I saw that the egg counter was practically empty and there was only a few, oops, I put my yolk in, or whites in there, so I'm gonna have to steal out some yolk. There was only a few eggs left, so I stopped with my cart and I was like, told my 9-year-old, wait with the cart, as I ran to grab some because I was like, I gotta get eggs. We're out of all of our eggs and my backup stashes of eggs. So 3 whole eggs plus 1 yolk. This is gonna give a really great creamy texture, to our brownie. The yolk just adds a little extra. We're gonna put our chocolate chips in here now that we have a good part of the butter melted. And the reason we wait for the butter to be melted before we add the chocolate chips in is because chocolate burns really quickly when you put it over direct heat. And so I'm making sure that they've got coated in some nice butter first so that it will be nice and the oil will prevent the chocolate from burning. There we go. I'm gonna give this, kind of break it up and give it a nice stir. It won't take much for the chocolate chip and the butter to melt. You just want to make sure you don't leave it on there and burn it. There we go. Perfect. We're just popping down some of the rest of that butter, let it melt. And I'm just going to kind of keep stirring it. Because these are being used in the exact same recipe, I'm not going to bother washing my whisks clean because we're gonna be mixing the brookies and the brownies together anyways. So we have our 3 eggs plus 1 egg yolk, and then we're gonna be adding in some more vanilla. We're gonna add in 1 tablespoon of vanilla. There's a lot of vanilla in this recipe, but it's worth it, it's delicious. Okay, 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract. And we're gonna give these eggs a quick little whisk up. There we go. Perfect. Not too much because you don't want them to start whipping, but just enough to kind of mix it in. Now we're gonna add in our sugar. Second, I'm gonna take my chocolate off the heat because the butter's almost done melting. And now we are going to add in 1.5 cups of granulated sugar to our brownie mixture, or to our egg mixture for our to make our brownie part of the Brookies. So we've got 1, and now a cup more. And we're gonna give this a nice mix. There we go. Beautiful. Kind of incorporate that sugar in there really well. Perfect. Now we're going to add in our salt, and we're going to be using baking powder for this and not baking soda. So we're going to add in a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Salt is really important in baking. It really helps bring out the flavors. So don't try to skimp on the salt. You always want to make sure you use the right amount. And then we're going to use 3/4 of a teaspoon of baking powder. So I'm just going to take my things, and I'm just going to leave a little bit of it out for 3/4 because they don't make a 3/4 one. And then we're going to give this a quick stir. The eggs are going to be the most of the rising agent in this. So the baking powder is just going to do a little bit of work. Beautiful. And we're going to mix in our melted chocolate and butter into our egg mixture right now. And I'm gonna pour it in slowly as we are blending so that we don't have like the hot right on the hot and then we get like some curdled eggs. Okay. These are gonna be so good. Mix these in. So we've got them pretty well incorporated. I'm just going to go through with my spatula now, and I'm just going to scoop out all the rest of that because we don't want to lose any of that butter or that chocolate for our brownie. So we're going to scoop that all out. Perfect. Now we are going to add in cocoa powder and flour. So we are going to use 3/4 cup cocoa powder and 3/4 cup flour. So we're going to do 1/2 and 1/2. I'm using Ghirardelli because I do love Ghirardelli. And most of the time I use Ghirardelli chocolate chips. But all I had on me were some Toll House because they were sold out at the store. So we're going to use 3/4 cups cocoa powder. There we go. And then we're going to use down on me, and then 3/4 of a cup flour, and then we'll mix it up together. This is going to give a lovely, very rich chocolatey brownie, and that's going to be the bottom base of our Brookie. There. So 3/4 of a cup flour. So I'm going to just measure it out. And there we go. And now we're going to mix these together until they're just combined, but don't over mix them because we don't want to whip our eggs. It looks so delicious. It's coming together. A really rich brownie, and I love using butter in my baked goods over oil. I think it just is going to give it such a better texture and flavor. There we go. Okay, and I'm going to finish up. I'll give it a quick stir with my spoon, just to mix in any of this powder that is at the top. and then scoop under the bottom. Make sure you don't have any pockets on there, but that's kind of why I like to add the dry to the wet. Now taking a 9 by 13 tray, we are going to give it a good spray down of, make sure you get all the edges. And this is going to prevent our brownie from sticking. I like to do our brownies without parchment paper in here because I like the chewiness that happens when they cook on the metal pan. And you want to use a metal pan. You don't want to use a glass pan or a ceramic one. I find metal works the best for brownies. And we're going to just add our whole brownie mixture to the base of our pan. There we go. And scrape it all out. And I do have my oven preheated to 350 degrees. So we'll make sure we get all of this out. And then we're gonna spread it out so we have a nice even layer. Beautiful. Put it right over here. And then I give it a good shake. This helps even it out. And then with our Brookie part, we're going to smush it out. And you're just gonna lay it on top of the brownies. And so this dough, while it is a cookie dough type thing, it is different than the cookie dough recipe I use because it's more of like a blondie versus a like chocolate chip cookie, because you want it to kind of cook at the same like rate that the brownies cook. And so we're just smushing it out into a nice flat layer because we want it to cover the whole brownie top. And then we're gonna bake this. These bake for about 35 minutes at 350. And what you do is you bake it for about 20 minutes. And then after 20 minutes, you're gonna just put a little bit of aluminum foil over the top of it so that the cookies don't get burnt or like overly brown. That allows the brownies to cook through on the bottom, but stops the direct heat on the top of the cookies. And so you'll have like a perfect like golden brown at the top. We're gonna lay that. And say, these just look absolutely delicious. If my kids were here, it'd be hard to keep them from eating all of this batter or this dough. My kids, sometimes I make cookies and I feel like they just want to eat the dough and the batter. And I'm like, no, I have to bake up a cookie. I can't not make cookie dough and not bake it up. Okay, now I've got a little bit, so we're gonna make sure we patch in any of these little holes. So we have this lovely kind of cookie top layer on our Brookie. And then we're gonna serve these with vanilla ice cream. And we have chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream.
You have a question? Could you roll out the cookie dough on parchment paper and then lay it on top?
You could totally do that. You could easily do that. And it would probably be, you just have to make sure you roll it out in the right thing. But yeah, you could definitely do that and it wouldn't change anything. There we go. So we've got our cookie dough all layered out. Give my hands a quick wash. Okay, we're gonna pop these in our oven. So I have my oven set to 350 degrees and we are going to cook them for 20 minutes. And then after 20 minutes, I'm going to put a layer of aluminum foil over the top, just lightly over the top. And that's just going to prevent it from the top browning even more. And then we'll cook it for about another 15 minutes. Now let's work on our sourdough melts that we're going to be making today. So we have two breads. If you were with us on any of our previous streams, This is our it was our green onions and cheddar bread that we made. I think we popped it out of the oven last night. We were working on that a couple days ago. And this is our traditional sourdough bread. I do use the same sourdough base for both breads. And we're gonna be using these for our cheddar melts today. So we are going to, I'm gonna use the green onion and cheddar on mine, and my husband likes the traditional on that. We are going to be using smoked cheddar, white cheddar, and roast beef for a double cheddar melt. Okay, let's start by cutting off our pieces. One thing that's nice about when I make sourdough fairly often is we use the bread for sandwiches or grilled cheese after we've had it with our dinner. And it actually, I figured out the cost of what it is to make sourdough, and it saves a loaf of sourdough bread of just plain only cost me about $1.75 to make, which is a lot cheaper than buying it at the store. At the store, the loaves go anywhere between $1 or $4.99 and $6.99. This is a really large one, so I'm just gonna do a half one because we are going out to eat tonight for dinner. My daughter picked hibachi for dinner tonight, so I'm just gonna do a halvesies. You're gonna take your sourdough and you're gonna just rub a little bit of room temperature butter on just one side of the bread, because this is what's going to be on the skillet and crisp up nicely. And you don't need a lot of butter for this. A little bit of butter goes a long way, especially when it's soft. It will spread just nicely. And then we're gonna do our halvesies here. This green onion and cheddar bread was so delicious. I had some for breakfast. I toasted it up and put a slice of cheese on it. It was so good. And there we go. Got this side. Okay, I'm gonna turn on my skillet to start the cooking process as we do our layering. So we're gonna start out with one cheese on the bottom, and then we'll put our meat, and then we'll do the second cheese on the top. That way you'll get a good cheesy bite in each one. Okay, so here's our aged white cheddar. When we're doing this, you wanna make sure that your cheese does not overlap your bread, because then it will melt down and burn on your skillet. So kind of do like you're making a lovely mosaic here, and kind of do a little patchwork of cheese. And perfect. And lovely. And now we're gonna do our roast beef. You don't wanna do a super thick layer of meat when you're making grilled cheeses, because a thick layer will make your sandwich stay cold and your cheese never melt. Let's see if I can actually open these. They always say pull here, and they never open. Okay, so do a nice thin layer of meat on here. We don't need too much. A little packs a long punch anyways, but you want your cheese to be able to get nice and melted. Okay, and we'll put about 4 on that one. And I'm gonna do, let's say 1, and there we go. We'll do 2 on there. Now we're gonna layer it with my smoked cheddar cheese. I do love a good smoked cheese. I have this little glass dome, and there's a thing, and you can actually you put a little smoking chip in it, and you can smoke cheese on it, or it's for anything. You could smoke a cocktail or little sandwich meats, but we smoked some little some different cheddars on there one time. It was so good. Okay, so we've got our cheddar cheese, our smoked cheddar on here. And again, you want to make sure your cheese does not go over where your bread is. Otherwise, you're going to burn it. And we're gonna let those sit and cook. While we are letting these sit and cook, we are going to feed our sourdough so we can make some sourdough bread later tonight. We're gonna use this guy for feeding our sourdough. So I'm gonna make a new set of loaves tonight, and we wanna make sure we have a nice active feed. I'm gonna wipe my counter off. We've got a little brownie explosion over here. So in order for you to make a good sourdough, your starter has to be fed within like 6 to 8 hours of using it so that it is active and will help with the fermentation process of the bread. So we are going to feed it so I can make new loaves, because it takes about 2 days to make a loaf of bread, and we'll be out of our bread soon.
You have a question? Do you use sourdough for all your bread, or do you still buy some from the store?
I'd still buy some from the store, and then I also make yeast bread every now and then. But some of my little ones, they don't like they like sourdough on some things, but not like on a sandwich. So I used like a honey wheat for them. So we're gonna add in about 5 tablespoons, because I did feed it yesterday, so it's pretty active. And then we're gonna do 5 tablespoons of water, and we'll give that a stir. But I am hearing this starting to bubble, so we'll do our first flip. I do multiple flips. The first one is really to melt the butter and warm the bread up to start the melting process. And then the second flip is for getting the nice golden crusts. Okay, so we added in 5 of my tablespoons of flour. A tablespoon is equal to 15 milliliters or grams, and so we're going to use 75 of it in water, which is the same as 5 tablespoons. I just find it's easier than getting 5 tablespoons and scooping them out. So I just do the conversion. And when I'm feeding, I typically always feed mine in either sets of 5 or sets of 10, because math is easy when you have to just multiply it by 5 or 10. And we're gonna give it a nice stir. And this is gonna feed our starter so that it is nice and bubbly. When you are making your sourdough, if your starter is not bubbly, then your sourdough will not turn out. So just like if you're new to sourdough making and you're like, oh, I think it's ready, if it doesn't have a nice bubble on it, you need to feed it again and get it nice and fermented. There we go. I think we are ready for our next flip. I can hear the good sizzle. Okay, now we're gonna be for our melting stage. And this is gonna be for the full melt and then the browning. So we have this guy, I'm giving him a good stir, and I'm gonna scrape my spoon off. Now I have this big jar, which helps for, so I don't have to necessarily discard every single time. I do a lot of recipes that I have to discard that I use it just because they're delicious. But this big jar is really nice to have. I do have my, here's my other little one, but he is already to the top. And this one is good for making about 1 loaf at a time. Like this is good for 1 loaf and a small batch of a discard things. If you are looking to make 2 loaves of bread at a time, invest in a bigger jar. It will benefit you. Otherwise, you're gonna constantly have some discarding out, and then you'll then be worried, do you have enough discard left to make an active starter for it? So we've got our starter fed for our for making our bread later tonight. Let's check on our roast beef melts and see.
You got a question? What are you making for dinner tonight?
Dinner tonight, we are actually not making dinner tonight. Today is my daughter's 15th birthday, so she wanted to go out to Shogun's, which is a hibachi, like a Japanese grill, because she loves sushi and she loves hibachi and she loves filet mignon. She's a little bougie, so we'll be doing that tonight, but I will be making later tonight we're going to be making some sourdough bread so that we can start the prep, so I can have a couple loaves in a day or two, because we are almost out. This is the bread we baked up last night that we made 2 days ago. So this was our cheddar and green onions, and this is our traditional one. So we will be out of this in about a day or two, so we need some new bread. Okay, let's see if these are ready for their next flip. Perfect. We've got a lovely golden crust on here. Beautiful. And, okay. I can hear some of my kids. I have three of my kids are at school, and I have 2 of my kids here. It's nap time, but they're definitely playing. I hear one of them jumping upstairs in their crib. I was like, oh, of course. I was like, you're supposed to be nap and well rested, so you're well behaved at dinner tonight. Which, going out to eat, everyone always is asked like, oh, you guys cook all the time. And I said, well, I do have to feed my family all the time. And going out to eat with, I have 5 kids, and then, so that's 7 people. That's not cheap to go out to eat with 7 people, but the worst part is not necessarily the cost, is 1 and 3-year-olds are not fun to go out to eat with. It's just not, it's not fun for anybody else in the restaurant, and it's not fun for us. That's why we do love hibachi, because at least they're entertained with the fire and the theatrics, and they do like rice and teriyaki noodles and salmon. So, but I'm like, I don't do extra cooking shows just to cook things for you. I just do what we're having for dinner or lunch, or making what our family eats, because we do have a lot of mouths to feed, and you gotta feed them like 3 times a day. Kids eat a lot. The worst is I feel like on winter break or summer break, and the kids are here for all of their meals during the day, I feel like I am a short order cook that just never ends. And I have to run my dishwasher twice a day when we're all in session, because we use so many plates and so many dishes. And I am just not the freezer food mom. I grew up with all of my food being homemade, so it's just ingrained into me, like, we'll make it homemade, we'll do it. We're not gonna just grab a box of, mac and cheese or, a freezer meal. I just make everything, and that makes a lot of dishes. Okay, our melts are just about ready here. I'm gonna get a plate. Put these on. Let's see how they're getting nice and golden. And we've got our cheese is starting to melt up nicely. Okay, we can take a quick look at our brookies while the rest of this is doing their final melt. I'll see if we're ready to put our aluminum foil over the top.
You got a question? What did the little ones have for lunch?
The little ones, I made them pasta with a Parmesan cream sauce, broccoli, and some grapefruit. And then we ate up the rest of our rolls that we had made the other day, our thing. So here is how it's cooking up nicely. It needs about, I would say, 5 more minutes before I put aluminum foil over it. We want to have a nice golden crust on it for it. Okay, let's check these guys out. I think we are ready. Yep. They are perfect. Okay, let me turn off my skillet. And these are...
you have a request, a quick run through of your Alfredo sauce?
Yes, so it's really simple. What I do is I first just cook up the noodles, and then I drain them. And when they're hot, I add about 2 tablespoons of butter and maybe 1/4 of a cup of cream and a dash of garlic salt. Then I throw in some fresh Parmesan while it's hot, and I stir it. And it just, the heat from the noodles and the cream and butter thickens everything up, and it melts together, and it's just a lovely cream sauce. You need about, I would say, 1/4 a cup of Parmesan. Okay, let's get these guys cut. Well, this one's mine, so I'm gonna cut mine. I'll cut him this way because he is already at halvesies. We've got our nice, you can see that nice cheddar. The cheddar cheese and chive bread is absolutely delicious. when you toast it up, it remelts the cheese. It's, you know, delicious. And then this is my husband's on the regular sourdough. You got the nice melty cheese. I won't take a bite of his because it's his. Well, guys, thank you for joining us. We will post a little short of our Brookies when they're done, but they won't be done for another 20 minutes, and we're not going to keep you guys on here for that. But again, thank you. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We try to do live shows every single day and just kind of show you what we cook and feed our family. Thanks for joining us.